demonstration of wandering. This is a method that I invented, and it makes beautiful wool that has a lot of watercolor type effects where there's layers of colors one upon the other. First thing I do is add some salt, and I'm adding about 2 tablespoons to this. Normally I use a 16-quart big kettle on top of the stove to do this, and I do a half a yard. But I'm going to have to really scale back because this is a much smaller pot, so I'm only going to use 1/8 of a yard. So my first color I'm going to add is blue, and you will see that I have a little toothpick marked with a black mark, and I'm not going to take any more dye than it is past the black mark, and I'm doing it damp, and I'm going to put that in there. Now I want to make a really light color this time, so it might look like there's not even any color in there. And I stirred it around to make sure it was all dissolved, and now I'm going to just plop my piece of wool in, and I'm not going to touch it. And I wait for the color to clear. Now it's really hard when I'm making these light ones to know when the color clears, but I'm going to go ahead and now prepare my next color, which is turquoise. And I have to prepare it in this measuring cup because I don't want to add dry dye to there now. So I'm dipping it in, well, and it's not damp enough, so I dampen it. And I put it in here and stir it around. You can see it's a very, very, very light color. And now, I would have waited for all my color to take up. I presume it has. And I'm going to pour this over top. And I'm not going to touch it. Now, having said that, sometimes I look at things and I think, well, there's a big patch of blue. I want to make a light color, so I'm going to push it down. It was a patch of turquoise, actually. And it appears to me as though it's okay for me to add the next color, but normally you would be having longer wait times because you want the water to be perfectly clear. And now I'm going to add the tiniest amount of orange. And once again, just like with the spot dyes, I make judgments as to how much coloring is in there and if I want more. Now here's something interesting. I didn't dry off my toothpick very well, and it acted like a magnet, and that's way too much dye for me. I don't want that much, so I'll use that for something else. So now I've got an appropriate amount. I'm going to put it in there, and now I see that that's the color I want, and I'm going to pour it over. Now sometimes when I add this third color, I will give it a little turnover. So you can see I'm getting a very, very light color. And now my last color, you can see I'm rudely robbing water from my pot, which is my habit. I'm going to add some brown, seal brown. And as you can see, hardly any color in there. And those of us who are afraid of the light, we will want to add more, but please don't do it. You can't have a light color by adding more and more dye all the time. And sometimes I return to a color I've already used, and I'm going to do that with blue because I was a little disappointed in its depth. So dampening my toothpick, drying it off so that it's not too wet, dipping it in. And remember, blue is a really weak color in this dye company. Now, last but not least, I'm going to pour this over top, and we'll have a beautiful piece of wool for snow, perhaps. Hardly any stirring around. And that's wandering. You can do it to any depth of color by using ratio. So I was using toothpicks, and you just want to keep the same measure. So I could use 1/8 of a teaspoon to be my measure. I could use 1/32, and of course each change of the dye spoon brings you a different value. Thank you very much, and there'll be lots of great instructions on how to do this yourself with your own dyes. Happy dyeing!